Okay, so as it's exactly 6 o'clock, Tuesday, 17th of October 2023, the Licensing Committee, we will start the meeting. If I can first of all draw your attention to the agenda. Item 1, the evacuation procedure. We have no members of the public tonight, so just a brief reminder, please exit by the door you came in through. If you need any assistance, raise your hand and officers will assist you. If I could ask people to switch their mobile phones to silent or vibrate or whatever for the duration of the meeting. Item 2 is apologies, and I have received some apologies. I've had apologies from Councillor Croft, and also Councillor T. Shepherd and Councillor N. Phillips. I don't believe there's any other apologies. I think everyone else is here. So thank you for your attendance. Item 3, the minutes. Can I have a proposer, Councillor Clark, and a seconder, Councillor Morton? So happy for me to sign those as a true and correct minute of the meeting. Thank you. Great. So, item 4, declarations of interest. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. I just need to change my declaration of interest insofar as I'm no longer a member of the outside body at the Nuneaton Festival of Arts.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. The officers made a note of that. Thank you. Any other declarations of interest not printed on the papers? No. In that case, we will move on to item 5, public consultation. I haven't been advised of any public consultation. We haven't had any letters in, and there are no members of the public present. So we will move on to the main business, which is agenda item 6, Hackney Carriage Private Hire Drivers, Operators and Vehicle Proprietor Licensing Policy. And I believe we're going to have Ricky Casserly. You're going to present this item for us.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The committee is asked to consider adopting the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Driver, the Private Hire Operator and Vehicle Proprietor Policy. The committee is also asked to consider the amendment to the Vehicle Licensing Policy. And the draft for the driver, operator and vehicle proprietor policy were originally brought before the licensing committee in September 2021, where the committee agreed the documents were to be sent out for public and trade consultation. So in January 2023, both these policies, the driver, operator, vehicle proprietor and slight amendment to the vehicle licensing policy were sent out for consultation, and this consultation period ended on the 16th of April 2023. No objections were received during that period from any member of the trade or any member of the public. Just to break down and summarise the policies slightly, so the driver, operator and vehicle proprietor policy focuses on the following areas, and most of which are already foundations for our application process, but this policy will underpin them. So firstly is allowing, which is a big change in our processing, is allowing for a private hire only driver licence. So this authority currently issues a dual badge, so allowing each applicant the one successful completion of the application process to drive both Hackney carriages and private hire vehicles. Now, in line with sort of trade demand for pre-booked work only, maybe led through Uber or other app-based companies, but there is a suggestion within this policy to have a private hire only badge. So that will mean applicants can apply to only drive private hire vehicles, and the application process is obviously so slightly different so that they won't need to sit a road knowledge test because of the pre-booked element to it. The policy will also amend our medical requirements, and it will do so in line with bus and lorry drivers' medical requests and bring them in line with the 5-year Group 2 medical requirement, so they'll only have to submit medicals every 5 years. This policy, the driver policy, will also allow for DBS checks, or require DBS checks for each licence holder every 6 months. The way the council will facilitate that is by asking drivers to sign up to the DBS online update service, which charges them £13 a year, but means they won't have to submit 6 monthly manual requests for DBSs. Now, they still have drivers, licence holders, still have an obligation to notify the licensing authority within 48 hours of any convictions or points that they do get. But this will give the licensing authority the opportunity every 6 months to monitor that, whereas at the minute we only get that every 3 years. It will also provide for a basic disclosure for vehicle licence proprietors, so vehicle licence holders. They don't have to be drivers at the minute. Generally they are, and that process won't change in that scenario. But if we have a vehicle licence proprietor that isn't licensed with us, how can we be certain that that person is responsible enough to maintain a vehicle to the standards we're asking? So we do that by way of DBS checks, or proposal is to do that by way of DBS checks, whereas at the minute we don't do anything. The use of NR3, so that's the National Anti-Fraud Network scheme that's set up, and NR3 is specifically a revocation and suspension register that all local authorities should now be signed up to. It's something that we are using already, but this is just confirmation in our policy of the use of that. We check every applicant and renewal applicant that they're not on the NR3 system, or there's no information contained within NR3 of any suspension or revocation. And also we put any suspensions or revocations on that system as well for the use of other local authorities. There's more stringent, so within the policy, the more stringent fit and proper tests for applications for private hire operator licences, and they include checks to do with previous convictions, bankruptcy, company directorship. Again, the convictions are already done, but the policy will bring in a system where each director of the company will be checked, as well as anybody taking phone calls, because again there's a lot of responsibility that goes with operator license holders, a lot of information they retain, etc. And also you'll see within the body of the report an adoption of the penalty point scheme, and that's detailed in Appendix C. So what that will do is enable us to have a better process of monitoring lower level compliance issues. So just to give you an example, so minor incidents which we might find, like failure to use authorised roof light, we'll just give them 4 points. So it's low level compliance elements that's good practice in taxi and private hire work, but not something we'd necessarily take formal action and bring them in front of the committee for. Failure to notify in writing the council of a change of address within 7 days. That's important for us if we need to communicate messages to licence holders, but again it's something that's often missed, not something again we're going to prosecute for. But if we've got a tally that we can keep up these minor point schemes, after a certain period of time they can be brought before the committee to have their licence reviewed. Do you have a question? Did you have a question? Councillor Clark, sorry.
I've got 2 or 3 questions actually, but I don't really want to finish your report.
I've only got a couple more sentences. So that's generally a summary of the reports themselves. The committee is asked to also consider a slight amendment to the vehicle licensing policy, and that is detailed in 5.4, and it is that the authority discontinues the licensing of new and replacement hackney carriage and private hire vehicles which are Euro 4 vehicles, engines and older, and again that's designed around emission-based, reducing the emissions and the standard of vehicle that we licence. Just to comment, say the policies are designed to, or the adoption of the policies are designed to improve public safety and improve standards in the taxi trade, and the committee is now asked to consider the adoption of both policies. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Councillor Clark, first of all.
Thank you, Chair. 2 or 3 questions, actually. I'll ask and then get the answer, if that's okay. Disciplinary hearings, page 20. Sorry, page 10, beg your pardon. Page 10, or 20, whichever page you're looking at. In there, I mean, before we start, I probably should identify that we have quite a robust way of dealing with any infringements to our licensing laws. However, I understand the rationale for bringing this forward to maybe pick up some of the smaller instances. But 7.21, in there it refers to disciplinary matters, and in that it says being referred to licensing committee or subcommittee. Now, I don't know whether that's changed since I was last on, but any disciplinary matters used to come to the full licensing committee, not a subcommittee. Is that a change in the rules?
There isn't a change. This document is a document that was put out for consultation, so I've not amended it in any way. There isn't a change. Any disciplinary matters that were to be brought before yourselves would be brought in front of full committee. There's no suggestion that it would be brought before a subcommittee.
That's correct. This is Shanaz speaking. Hello, everybody. And that is correct, what Ricky has said.
I should explain that was Shazia, our legal officer.
Yeah, can we have that clarified in there then, that it will only be the full licensing committee rather than a subcommittee, please, on the full, when it actually goes out for...
Yeah, so there'll be an amendment to that.
Kelly, can that be... Thank you. Thank you.
First question. Do you want me to carry on, Chair?
Please.
Sorry to be a bit pedantic. Picking up on the point you mentioned, actually, failure to notify in writing the change of address. It gives maximum of 3 points applicable after 7 days. What happens after a month, 2 months, 3 months, if you still haven't had that? The reason I'm asking that, because I'm very mindful of the fact that people sometimes do move around quite frequently, and you know, somebody in a year could potentially have 3 or 4 addresses. So I'm just wondering how you address that. You know, at what point do you say, hang on, they haven't given us an address change and we know they've changed?
The way I would interpret that is that in each occasion that they fail to notify in writing the licensing authority any change of address within 7 calendar days of them moving, that constitutes or would constitute 3 points, 3 penalty points. It is something that happens often. I wouldn't suggest it's common that it's 4 addresses within a year, for example. But often we receive renewal applications or seek to contact a licence holder and they've moved address, or that, you know, they don't tell us at the time, but they tell us at point of renewal, and that can create issues when we look to contact any licence holder if there's any enforcement issues or a more serious matter taking place. So hopefully it's only intended to target the few that do move around often or move around within the terms of their licence. And my interpretation of that is three points for each address change that they're not notifying the licensing authority of.
On a timely basis.
Come back, Chair. I am on. I think that's probably a good idea, but is it going to be, because as you identified there, you may not know until they actually put another application in. So will it be retrospective? Because I'm thinking, should it be retrospective if they're then notifying you of the change of address with a new application? How do you identify when they should have notified you?
because of a moving in date or change of address date, that should be within 7 days of that, whatever date they use as a change of address. They absolutely will be issued retrospectively, in my view, just because they've committed the offence, if you like. They've not notified us of a change of address. They've managed, I suppose, to have got away with it not becoming an issue, but it's still a failure to notify. And if we're going to, obviously, hopefully what these do is increase the standards generally, and if we're going to set a certain standard and have these as the foundations for our enforcement, then we need to be consistent with them. And so, yeah, I believe it will be issued retrospectively.
Thank you, Chair. One final point, if I may. Well, while I'm on a flow. You indicated that we would issue these points, but you also said that they would be put on a register so that other authorities could see that register. Am I following that right?
So the points will be administered by officers until it reaches 12. So if they get 12 over a period, so they can be issued by both. Sorry, I'll clarify that. They can be issued by both officers if it's low level. Again, use the change of address, for example. There would be little point in bringing together a committee to give 3-4 points out for a change of address. So they can be issued by officers. However, if it's a more serious matter and we feel that there could be implications on the licence itself, the committee can also impose points after a hearing. They will always be brought before licensing committee where there is 12 points been achieved over 12 months, because that's when there's the consideration for punishment, further punishment.
Yeah, just to clarify, Chair, if I may. Obviously, drivers driving, particularly private hire drivers driving other locations, other areas, and you mentioned these going onto a database. Do we take into account other authorities' penalty points, or is it just our own that we consider this on?
Sorry, these points won't be put onto a national database. It's purely where there has been a refusal of a licence application, a suspension of a licence, or a revocation. So this low-level enforcement won't be shared outside of the local authority. It's only but if we got to 12, if an applicant or a licence holder got to 12 points, were brought before the committee deemed the points to be enough to revoke a licence or suspend a licence, then it would be shared with other local authorities at the point where we take action on the licence, essentially. Sorry if I wasn't clear about that earlier.
Yeah, thanks. I weren't quite clear as to where that sat, to be honest with you, and I appreciate the clarification. I'm content with that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morton.
Yes, thank you. Hello. Yeah, I'm content with the document. Yeah, I've gone through it all. Yeah, no expertise in the area, of course, but similar to Councillor Clark, my question is about the relationship between this document and I don't know how many, but every Uber I get into is licensed in Wolverhampton, and I just wondered what the relationship was and how we as an authority can keep control locally to our rules. So I haven't seen anything in the document about that. Should it be in there?
What a good question. It's being addressed nationally. I'm not sure if we heard about Andy Burnham's comments about the amount of Wolverhampton vehicles that were licensed in Manchester recently. And one of the reasons it's being addressed nationally, or there's somewhat more attention to it, is because there are no, unless there's a shared agreement between all local licensing authorities beforehand, there are no enforcement powers for different authorities' officers to be able to enforce their rules and conditions, if you like. So this document will be purely for the Nuneaton and Bedworth vehicles only. It would be, and again, it's one of the issues that's highlighted with cross-border hiring, essentially, that there aren't any enforcement powers. But also, further to that, like you've touched on, I've got no knowledge of what Wolverhampton's conditions are, neither should I really. So it is completely to do with Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council licensed vehicles. They're the only vehicles we have any authorisation to inspect and to enforce. And unfortunately, what the topic that you mentioned is recognised nationally, and Uber and Wolverhampton particularly has highlighted it because they're legally all over the country. 36,000 licensed vehicles, private hire vehicles, 36,000 was what that article, one of the articles I read said. And that was mentioned, we talked about it in a technical group I had earlier on with other authorities. It's an issue for every local authority, particularly the bigger cities where these vehicles are prevalent. But unfortunately, there's not an awful lot at the minute like licensing authorities can do about it, particularly not with policy documents. We do have a predominantly operate use Hackney carriage vehicle licensing policy, whereby the terminology of it is we won't look to license a Hackney carriage where it isn't predominantly to be operated in the area. Try and prove that. What is predominantly used? So if someone's using a vehicle 6 days in Coventry and 1 day in Nuneaton, and they come for interview with us and say that now I'm not going to do that anymore, are they intending to predominantly operate in Nuneaton at that point? Well, that would be down for you to determine. It's a national issue. It hopefully, with now more senior politicians' attention and in bigger areas, it will get recognition in Parliament and the law be looked at.
Councillor Guttridge, you had a question?
Thank you. I'd like to delve a bit deeper into the Uber. Where I live, there's 6 Wolverhampton taxi drivers on the estate. 6. Obviously, they're doing nothing wrong. Is that correct?
Just to give a brief, Uber, private hire operators, sorry, Uber is just an example. Private hire operators licensed in an authority can distribute a job anywhere in the country, providing it is distributed to a vehicle and a driver of the same authority. So Uber technically only need 1 operator's license. So Wolverhampton's an example. So what they can do is have a Wolverhampton operator's license, vehicles licensed by Wolverhampton, drivers driving those vehicles licensed by Wolverhampton, and send jobs to Manchester and send jobs to Solihull and send jobs to Dorset or wherever in the country legally. That is legally permitted within private hire legislation. Does that answer that bit?
Can I come back on the next question? When you get to your 12 points, you come to the committee, and possibly, I won't preempt what will happen, but if they lose the licence, have they got any right of appeal at the magistrates?
Yes, because it's a revocation or potentially a revocation or a suspension. As with any decision that's made in here, they've got 21 days to appeal to the magistrates' court.
I'd like to just ask another question, if possible. 9 times out of 10, they say, oh, we didn't know we'd got to log it onto the council system, that we've got a speeding or this, that and the other. And they come to committee and they say this, that and the other. Now, how are we going to counteract that, please?
Another good question. I would hope that the use of the penalty points scheme would almost take that excuse away, because it is an excuse. I mean, is it enough of an excuse? Again, that's down for your consideration, really. We do give them conditions of licence where it clearly stipulates that they need to notify the licensing authority within a certain period of time at each point of renewal. It's how far do you go? We ask for them to be in their vehicles and ready for inspection when an officer comes and inspects the vehicle. It's down for you to sort of consider whether or not whatever excuse it is that they come out with is a reasonable one. hopefully, with use of the penalty point scheme, if they do that 3 times in a year, then that's enough of a way of seeing that they're obviously either not responsible enough to take notice of what they should and shouldn't be responsible for, and yeah, it shows a lack of responsibility, in my opinion. Does that answer that question? I know it's a difficult one.
Back once more. Sorry, Chair. I fully support the Euro 4. They're dirty diesels now. We're going on to Euro 5s and Euro 6 with AdBlue, which are a lot cleaner diesels now, and we get the MPG. I run a diesel with AdBlue, and it's gone are the days of putting your foot down and plenty of smoke coming out the back.
And that's hopefully what it's designed to, but reasonably as well. We can't. I think Coventry. I was speaking to licensing managers from Coventry today, and they have a policy in place where they will only license electric vehicles as new Hackney carriages. Whilst again, that's incredibly tipped on the scales of reduction in emissions. Asking someone who's probably on minimum wage to be able to afford one of those and maintain one is very, very challenging. So I think the policy that is to be considered to be adopted sits in the middle, and sits hopefully with a fine balance between the two.
I fully support you on that. The electric vehicles have got a long way to go. You can't get the battery charge. They're not all that green emissions. The quality of the build. So yes.
Councillor Clark, you had another question?
No, just going to move the recommendations as set out in 2, Chair, if that's...
Well, I was going to move it from the chair. If you want to second it.
I'll second it, but with the...
Yeah, before we do that, have we
amendments.
finished with the questions, everybody? Yeah, we finished with the questions, okay. So
With
I
the
will move the
amendments.
recommendation printed on page 7 from the chair. That's seconded by Councillor Clark.
With the amendment to the subcommittee for...
Yeah.
appeals.
No, duly noted that the report be amended to say that it's the committee, not the committee stroke subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
In that case, any member? Any comments? Yeah. Councillor Morton?
Thank you. I was just thinking, I'm sorry I didn't know the process, well I could talk now, it's been agreed, but is there going to be any marketing? Because when I read this, I was quite moved by the fact that it was a breach of their condition, or their licence, not to turn up. Yet, I've had numerous occasions where Joy's elderly parents were actually left in dire circumstances on a freezing cold night because the taxi didn't turn up. And this has happened plenty of times, we all know this, but I wondered if the public should know a little bit more about the responsibilities of the private hire vehicles.
Want to come in on that?
Thank you, Chair. More publicity, the better, in my opinion. As you all know, my experience has been with enforcement, and one of the main challenges was the public not knowing what is acceptable from a taxi driver or taxi company and what isn't. You know, they don't know that they're not allowed to refuse taxis at the roadside. So, again, you think about the consequences of that, and I've heard complaints of young females only wanting to go short distances, literally having to walk home at 2 o'clock in the morning because taxis have refused to take them. That's a breach of condition. It's not something that they should be doing. It should be something that should be reported. So to go back to your original point, I would back 100% as much publicity with this from communications, from social media as we possibly can get out there. It's important the public know what they can and should and shouldn't expect, and what to do in the event that they don't, them expectations aren't met, and what consequences potentially for drivers if they don't meet those standards or do whatever. So, I'd fully support and get behind any sort of social media communications or any sort of advert, article, whatever it is, that gets this word out there.
Any other member? I'd just like to make a few comments on this report. First of all, thank you for bringing this forward. I'm glad it did go out to consultation, as was requested back in 2021. I have had some contact from other members. Councillor Brown in particular wrote to me about this to support it. It's about improving standards and public safety, and that's what we're about in this committee. We have been very supportive of all measures to do that. And obviously, we are very supportive of holding to account drivers that don't live up to their licence conditions, because public safety is our paramount concern. This report and what it's seeking to adopt and the appendices in there, there's some good stuff in this. It is keeping us well and truly in line with current developments, as you were talking about, Ricky. It's enhancing the disclosure and barring service side of things, also adopting into our policies the latest Department for Transport standards. And I have to say, Councillor Guthridge, I think you're spot on. And I think, Councillor Clark, you also mentioned it about Euro 4. We shouldn't be having those vehicles anymore. I understand, what Coventry are trying to do there, but they've gone too far the other way. Electric vehicles, the jury is well and truly out on the residuals right now. And so it's just not economically reasonable for us to expect that from people who could well be only earning minimum wage. But I think we can expect that, there is a reasonable level, and we're on to Euro 6 now. So to expect Euro 5 and above would be, I think only realistic there. I did wonder about the point system and wonder if it was too bureaucratic, and I'm not sure what the triggers were, but obviously if there's something there that, is untoward, we've had assurances from officers that they would bring it to the committee anyway. They wouldn't just rely on that point system. And when you read Appendix C, if you look at page 20, point 4 in particular, very much focuses on all of this is being done to introduce consistency for everybody so that the standards are absolutely clear, the word gets round with the drivers, officers have got some guidance to follow there, and so it gives them the confidence to be quite robust with this. And it is, as it makes the point on point 4 on Appendix C, all about improving our standards overall and public safety, which is the key thing that I started with and I'd like to finish with. So the recommendation has been moved and seconded. There are no other speakers. In that case, if we can move to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation with the amendment? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. So that's the end of the item. Item 7 is any other business, but I have no other items of business. I haven't been notified of any. Does any member wish to raise anything else? No? In that case, I will call the meeting to an end. Thank you all again for your attendance.
Thank you.